together with these wise, wonderful people. So we want to do this morning is three things. First, we're going to just do a quick review of where we've been as a congregation, and particularly in response to some of the growth we've been experiencing and how we've been trying to address some questions of capacity. We're going to share what we've learned through the last few months where we did this experiment of 2 services. We got a lot of great feedback from you. Annie's done a really good job of compiling that, giving us just a sense of where the congregation's at. And then lastly, we just want to propose a longer-term plan for the next few years, where we're planning to head into the future. We're not going to be voting on anything today. This is just informational, and then there's going to be chance for feedback over the next few weeks before we commit to anything more permanently. But just as a bit of a review, so over the past 4 years, we have been grateful to be experiencing some growth here at BCC. Kevin's going to go over some of the statistics and the data about growth and capacity. But before we get into that, I just want to begin with a word of gratitude. A word of gratitude for you as a congregation for creating a hospitable place where people are being enfolded, where they're finding community, where they are growing in their faith. And this is just really a testimony to the culture you've helped create. And behind numbers, like I said, are people that God loves and desires. When we initially explored this experimental time, I just wanted to reminded us of the initial name of our movement as Covenanters, that we were initially called Mission Friends. And I just like to remind us that as Covenant people, we are not just friends, we are mission friends, and that really holds 2 things in tension. On the one hand, we want to cultivate deep ties of fellowship. We are friends, and it is great to have that space where we are known and where we know one another. But we balance that with an open-handedness to other people who are seeking community, seeking God. And so we are friends on mission. And the New Testament really gives us this picture, this call of being a hospitable community. In Acts 2, they were committed to fellowship and discipleship, and yet they were making room for the people God was adding daily to their number. And so I just want us to keep that bigger vision before us as we talk about these adaptive opportunities as a church. I'm going to hand this over to Kevin. He's going to talk just a little bit more about some of the statistics and so on.
Good morning, everyone. So from 2022 to 2025, our average attendance on Sunday grew from 182 to 265 people, including kids. So that was a really significant growth.
Go back.
And we have welcomed 60 adults as new members during this time. Our attendance has started to stabilize somewhat over the past 2 years. And during our 2-service experiment, our average attendance went up fairly modestly from 255 to 265 people on a Sunday morning. To talk a little bit about capacity, the capacity in our sanctuary is currently 320 seats. And this is based on allotting 24 inches per person in our pews. And we're going to introduce getting measuring tapes out for everyone, so only 24 inches. This is recommended. This is the number that's recommended when you look at actual capacity for the pews. So the consensus among experts is that when you are at 80% capacity, you are no longer creating a hospitable space for visitors. And our 80% capacity is 256 seats. Our average is running us over our hospitable capacity. We regularly have larger Sundays with upwards to 285 people. Just to go off script for a moment, I was just at my son's Army graduation this weekend, and I feel like if we introduced Army discipline, we could... I'm not going to go there. Sorry, Phil. All right. In response to this capacity need, our leadership team has been seeking to discern the best way to serve our growing congregation. This led us to the experiment with a 2-service schedule from February to June of this year. During this time, we also commissioned a building expansion team to explore the feasibility of adding capacity to our sanctuary. We also started exploring the possibility of church planting. And I think I turn it over
Yeah,
back to Phil.
sure, yeah. So now I just want to talk a little bit about kind of what we learned during this experimental time. I'm going to hand this to Annie in just a minute, but I just want to share one of the biggest things that I learned, that I think we learned, is that we have a healthy, resilient, adaptive congregation. And I just want to thank you for going along with us as we try some things. Change is hard in an organization, and it's particularly hard when we maybe don't agree with decisions made by leadership. I just want to notice and name that I just saw a lot of healthy process in this time. And there's good communication. We didn't have a mass exodus of people angry, and we're still sticking with us. And if anything, my hope is that one of the things we learned is that we can try things. We can be adaptive and responsive. And I just really think that our health through this is a real testimony to the maturity and the resilience and openness of this congregation. I'm so grateful to be a pastor of a congregation like this. And so I thank you for your openness to the Spirit, to trying things. And so that was for me a win. Whatever we end up doing, that was a cool thing to learn, that we can try things and it's okay. And God is faithful, and you have been very faithful. So I'm going to hand it to Annie. We got about, 130, 40 responses. She did a great job of just consolidating some of the things we've learned.
Yeah, and I think I have to jump on the gratitude train this morning as well and echo on behalf of myself and the lead team our gratitude for just what Phil said, jumping in with this hard process, but particularly as we kind of engaged with this discernment model of decision making, and we asked you to kind of be patient with us. We asked you to listen with us for where is God calling us? What are the joys that we're seeing in this season of two services? What are some of the challenges? And I think our hope was, and I think we kind of took some time where we didn't just simply make like a list of pros and cons. What are the good things? What are the bad things? How do we like cancel them out or sort of weigh them out with some special, opinions or whatever? But we really took that information that you guys shared with us. We listened with each other and tried to listen for where is God moving? What are the things in line with Scripture? What are the things in line with God's loving presence and who he's calling us to be as a community? And so, yeah, as Phil said, we got 130 feedback forms. We kind of centered in and we kind of focused in on these joys and challenges. And Phil and I had the pleasure to, the joy really to kind of sit and read through each of them, to read all of the opinions, the wisdom, the longings, the desires, and the noticings that you shared with us, and that was a great gift. And as we spent some time with those, there were a number of themes that emerged. I think we kind of narrowed it down to sort of the top 5 sort of joys and helpful aspects. I think a number of people noted how spacious it was to have more room to come in, to be 5 minutes late to the service and have a place to sit, to not feel like you were having to squeeze in next to somebody. A lot of people noted that having flexibility in the 2 service times made it easier to kind of come either earlier or later or vary, and that they found that was a more consistent way for them to worship. I think the next 2 kind of went together. There was a sense of increased community and connection that people shared, particularly in the Life Together hour between the 2 services bridging. They said, I've got involved in so many deep conversations. It's such a joy to see so many people fellowshipping together in that hour. And then people noted also a deepened sense of their own formation as they kind of wrestle with this, like, I learned that I can wait on God. I learned that I can listen. I'm so encouraged to see us as the community waiting on God. I'm so encouraged to see other people jumping in to serve. This feels like a joy to me in this season. And then kind of looking for those longings, those challenges, what's missing, what are we noticing that we still want in our community. I think far and away the biggest thing was this sense of our community really missing being all together, feeling the sense of missed connections. Some people were going to a different service. It felt a little bit like things were splitting apart, or just overall pointing towards a longing for deeper unity. Also, I think indicative of our kind and comparing community, the second most common concern that was named was the challenge and the burden that this schedule presented for our staff and our volunteers. So I thank you for that, and I know the staff is really grateful to have such a concerned community on their behalf. The next most common things that were named was a sense of, I think we created space and kind of maintained unity within our service time, but the adult formation classes, our children's classes, and our fellowship time were kind of feeling rushed in between the two services. So that was named as a longing, as a challenge. And then just a few people noted, in the second hour service, it feels a little empty. And that makes me a little bit sad, to see such open space here during the 11 o'clock hour. And I think as we kind of reviewed all these themes together and spent some time with them, with the lead team and the staff, and had time to kind of sit with them at our retreat at the end of May, our first noticing was just, yeah, we agree. There's not really a lot that we heard that wasn't something that we hadn't also been wondering about or noticing as well for the staff and the lead team. So that was really encouraging to see that we're kind of in alignment and on the same path. There was this sense of we've created, I think our overall takeaway, we've created more physical space for people to be here worshiping together, but we've lost some of that spaciousness in time, particularly in that community connection time outside of our worship service, where we're just missing that sense of presence together. I think our staff have done a wonderful job of maintaining their own rhythms and energy levels throughout this two-service period overall, but they have noted as well that the complexity, the busyness of the two-service schedule on Sunday, and not just longer Sunday days, but also things like having to coordinate more volunteers, having to kind of adapt schedules, really took a lot more energy to kind of like just make Sunday go. And they said, oh, we're really feeling this longing to be able to be creative, to kind of participate in other ministry opportunities as they come up, and yet we're feeling kind of constrained because we're putting so much into this Sunday time. So mostly due to your great efforts, our conclusion in this time is that we saw a lot of joys from our two-service time this spring, and it is workable. It is something that we could do, but it has significant drawbacks. And I think some of those things that we noticed about spaciousness and presence are things that we really want to be paying attention to. If we were to move forward with two services, we would need to kind of go back to the drawing board and find a way where we could kind of have room in all capacities, not just physical room, but also room for presence and room and spaciousness in our time. And kind of sitting with that realization for a little bit and kind of thinking, okay, if that's what would we do with that? How would we go back to the drawing board and rework all of this? We kind of came away thinking this sort of experimental time, all of our feedback is really kind of encouraging us and leading us to looking at options to preserve one service.
Okay, great. Thanks, Annie. And again, thank you for connecting and giving your feedback and for your patience with the process. So I want to just share a little bit about some ideas of where we're sensing a direction moving into the fall in the next few years. As mentioned, during this two-service experiment, we've also commissioned a team to explore some different possibilities for making physical space, expanding our sanctuary to make room for more people that way. This team consisted of Grady Henderson, who is our building manager, Dave Carlson, who is a longtime member, knows this building inside and out, and is also a contractor, Terry Redden, who is cooking brisket right now, is a professional designer, works on building design. I was a part of that team as well. And then we also brought in a number of other voices. We hired in some structural engineers. We talked with Susie McFadden to get her ideas on design as we looked at different options. Jeff G. was really instrumental in just thinking through technical dynamics. Jacob Henderson created some images for us to look at ideas. And so that was the team that's been working together. As many of you know, if you've been around, this church was designed to expand out to both the right and the left, and underneath these classrooms is a slanted floor that allows for the integration of 2 more wings to the sanctuary. The full build-out would add 175 of those 24-inch seats, and so we wanted to just do justice to that initial vision and explore that. One of the things that we learned through this process is that doing that full build-out project has a number of challenges and drawbacks. As you might see it just initially, the proposal would remove all the classroom space for adults that we use regularly. So there's a lot of space that we use. So to recover classroom space, the idea of bumping out walls then kind of starts this domino effect of maybe building other buildings out on the thing, which gets pretty expensive. The other thing we learned is that removing these walls as we've climbed around up there is a little more complex than we thought. It's not a bunch of guys weekend warrioring it with some sawzalls, but there are complex fire suppression systems and ducting, and so it's quite a big project. And as we envisioned or looked at that possibility, we realized that this would easily snowball into potentially up into $1 million project if we're trying to build out buildings and replace classrooms. The other concern we had with this idea is that it didn't factor in other pinch points in our building. And so if we're dealing with one side of the building, what about kid space and office space and bathroom space? So as you can see, that full build-out project kind of snowballs into a lot of things. We also wondered if that's actually maybe more ambitious than we need to be. Are we going to need 175 more seats or not? And it's hard to know that. But in the sort of trajectory we're seeing, we're not experiencing that type of explosive growth. It's just more of a steady 10 to 15 new members over a year or so. So these roadblocks encouraged us to just explore, are there some other options? Are there some maybe partial ways of adding a little bit more space in our building? And we looked at a ton of stuff, and I came up with some really bad ideas that were quickly ruled out by structural engineers. We were drawing all kinds of weird things. But a couple of ideas that we looked at, could we build a mezzanine just right up there? And we had a structural engineer tell us that it was a terrible idea. That is a sheer wall that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we'd get about 50 seats. So, okay, we tabled that one. Another idea we looked at was, what about replacing pews with theater seating? And technically, there's this idea that you can get more people in seats. You can access the center. You could maybe increase your capacity by 10% by doing that. And so we had a formal bid look at that. We ended up ruling that idea out for a few reasons. One, it was very expensive, about $130,000 just for seating. And it's based on kind of a psychological, hopeful, theoretical idea that we could get more seating. We were also just concerned about wasting perfectly good pews and maybe the liturgical values of maybe not creating more of what feels like an entertainment venue versus a church venue. So we've initially tabled that idea. But there was one compelling idea that emerged that we would like to share with you and just kind of present to you as what we see as an effective, financially responsible, sustainable, and adaptive possibility for the next few years for us. We want to propose, and this comes to you from the lead team as kind of a unanimous recommendation that we're going to have some time to sit with and get feedback on over the next couple of months before we finally move forward. And this is really a 2-phase project, and phase 1 of this would quite quickly and affordably add 30 seats by doing 2 things. One, we found a way to reduce the footprint of our tech booth, which we expanded during COVID. There's some new technology that allows us to mount cameras and move our video operator and switcher into the back office to control it via a monitor, which just alone could add 20 seats into the sanctuary for a pretty low cost. That, by adding some extra chairs, which we've done at different times, could get us 30 seats, and that's something we could do this summer, which would enable to relieve kind of the initial pressure on the building. It just gets us to where we need to be at 80%, especially to accommodate every 3 or 4 Sundays we have kind of a big one in the 280s. Which would allow us to just go into the fall, staying at one service. The second phase idea is once we kind of relieve that immediate pressure, we have an idea. Let me see, I've got to find my notes here. Oh, sorry, here's just a top-down map of phase 1. So you can see we could add a whole other pew at the back, which we have in the cafe right now, add 12 seats at the back and on the sides, which, yeah, kind of 30 to 35 seats, which would relieve some immediate pressure. You can probably leave those down for a minute. Phase 2 is an idea that we want to propose to you, and it's an idea that would add also then an additional 80 seats, bringing our total to and about 100 new seats in our sanctuary. And this is the idea of adding a partial 7-row bump out on each side of the sanctuary. And I want to give you just a couple images for you to kind of visualize this. Can we go there? I want to thank Jacob Henderson for his great Photoshop skills. These aren't perfect to dimension. We have some dimension drawings that don't quite give you the visual idea of this. But the idea here is that we would be able to preserve the roof line and not spend expensive money in moving fire suppression systems. We would preserve 2 large classrooms that are about 400 square feet. They'd be larger than the current classroom A because it would include the hallway. And allow us to have the ability to accommodate 100 new seats in our sanctuary in a pretty affordable way. We're going to go through some numbers. This is just kind of a back view where you'd see the 2 wings. That doesn't have the pews in it, but that's kind of the design concept. And then to make up for the, excuse me, the loss of our larger classroom C. The other part of this project would include framing out the back patio and creating what we'd call an atrium space, which would be a larger kind of mid-sized space, a creative indoor-outdoor space that could allow for adult formation groups. It would be a heated space in the winter and also could be a creative outdoor space in the summer, and could also potentially be used to deal with potential growth in kids and youth ministry, so kind of a multi-use space. This is an outdoor thing. Jacob did this on Keynote. Isn't that amazing? So anyway, thanks to him for helping us visualize this stuff. Yeah. So here's kind of the picture of the new layout of Bellingham Covenant Church. You see the 100 new seats in the sanctuary and kind of the 2 classrooms that we would preserve and the atrium space, which, by the way, is quite actually larger than Classroom C by another 300 or 400 square feet. I'm going to go over kind of some of the reasons why we've been thinking about this, but just for you to have some of the information before you. These are just some cost estimates, but what we're going to be doing this summer is having more solid numbers and some bids to bring to you for a vote near the end of summer. So this is something that we're not going to just plow ahead with without a lot of deliberation and reflection and congregational vote. But what we found compelling about this project is that we think it would serve our needs, but also not be overly investing in the building. It wouldn't be a huge expense compared to the big project. We are sophisticated guests based on conversations with designers and contractors is that the sanctuary remodel would, including the custom pews, would be about $160,000 to $170,000. These are ranges. The atrium space, kind of $90,000 to $100,000, a total of about $250,000 to $270,000 project. In terms of the funding idea around this, we, just in this 5 months, have finally received some funding we applied for during COVID, some relief funds, and it's just started to trickle in. To date, we've received $80,000 of COVID relief funding. And we're expecting any day now. I keep checking the mailbox, but we've been a notification of another one for around 40,000, and there might even be one more, but they're being really frustrating. So we're not going to count on that. But we do have received some unexpected funding that could bring our fundraising needs down substantially. Looking at potentially a fundraising project of about 150,000 to 190, depending on the funds we're still waiting on. These are the benefits that we've thought of with this proposal. Our thoughts is that this would really help us, obviously, accommodate our current capacity needs, but also be forward-thinking enough to realize that there's room for modest growth over the next few years. We didn't feel right about just saying, we're going to make enough for who we are and just say, we're closed, God. But if we look over the last few-year trend, we've just been noticing kind of a regular increase of 20 or so people each year, and want to just continue to create some room for that. So our new capacity our total capacity would go from 320 to 420 seats. Our new 80% number would be from 256 to 336. We also just see this as a fiscally responsible plan. By leaving the roof lines and existing classrooms, we don't have to get into major outbuilding million-dollar projects, adapting existing space of our overall footprint with our already quite large building. We like how this balances the expansion of our sanctuary with other parts of the building. So we're not just bringing up one side, but there's opportunities for kids' space to use that atrium if needed, has some aesthetic balance in the room. But more than that, it really, we think, would help us protect and preserve some of those values that Annie named, our human resources, our staffing, creating the spaciousness of time on Sunday, not putting all our energy just into Sunday morning, but freeing up staff for creativity in other areas. It will allow us to have more spaciousness, both physically and in terms of time, and enable us to experience the benefits of having a united church body on Sundays. I'm going to hand it back to Kevin, and he wants to share just a little update around the church planning conversation, because that's also part of some of our thinking as well.
Great, thanks, Phil. So church planting, we also have been considering the possibility of pursuing church planting. And so after listening to the congregation and learning about church planting process, and we've done that in the past. Letter Street Covenant Church came out of this congregation, and talking with church planting staff in the denomination, we discerned that this is a good option to consider in terms of if we hit new capacity limits down the road. So a good option to consider down the road. And there are a few things we discerned as we began talking about this. From our congregational feedback, we received only one response that indicated an interest in exploring church planting. This tells us that right now there isn't a lot of grassroots energy in church planting, at least at this time. We think there's a wisdom in planting from a slightly larger size of congregation than we currently have. So for a number of years, we've been on the low side of a mid-sized church, Organizationally, this is a difficult size to lead. A church needs similar staffing and programs, whether we're at the lower end or the higher end. So 230 to 350 people, we need about the same amount of staffing. And the problem with being at the lower end of the church size is that you have fewer resources for similar needs. If we planted now and we dropped the church congregation size to 220, we may have to cut off some of the vital staff that we currently have. And for the long-term sustainability of our organization, we see the wisdom in planting from a higher and a larger size than what we currently have. Church planting is also a long-term undertaking and could have a limited impact on capacity issues. For us to successfully launch a church, we would need a good 18 to 24 months of a runway. And a church plant may only involve sending 30 people. And you might think about who the people we want to send. I'm just joking. This might still leave us with capacity issues down the road. That part was just a joke. Church planting also has a significant cost emotionally for a congregation, and I know Adriel and I started here just after the previous church plant, and we could still feel the effects of having sent so many people away. So the loss comes with sending out a large number of friends to start another church, and we want to be mindful of how many major disruptions we've had recently with COVID and all the changes that have occurred in the past couple of years. So we just recognize the emotional impact that can have. So in our current thinking, we see this as a good phase 3 option. So after our phase 1 and phase 2 options, if we then again hit capacity issues, exploring a church plant could be a good phase 3 option, and that would involve bringing in someone who's interested in doing that. That's probably the most important thing that they say in a church plant, is having a leader who has a passion for that and leads the way. So that would be part of a healthy long-term strategy for us.
So I think I'll kind of wrap us up with like what's next as we look ahead to like what does this timeline mean for us with the different phases. Looking just now to the summer, the lead team, as Phil explained, has kind of authorized this phase 1, reducing the size of the tech booth and adding around 30 chairs in here. We're anticipating that will be a relatively low cost. We have money that we can spend to accomplish that in our capital improvement and building funds, so that doesn't require any additional budgeting, and that sets us up well to be all together in one space for the summer and into the fall. The second thing we're doing this summer is bringing this idea here to our community and beginning a feedback process. We hope to have some forms online where you can submit additional questions, gives you some time to kind of sit with this idea, allow it to percolate, allow it to listen for the things that you notice as it stirs up in you. We're hoping to have some more town hall or Q&A sessions either later this summer, hopefully maybe in July or August, where we can kind of engage with more of these questions and wrestling. The third thing, as Phil's already said, is we're planning to have our building committee work with some construction firms to get us more solid bids, where we have a set budget and a more, hopefully, set timeline on what this construction project would look like. And then once we have that information, our hope would be then at the end of the summer or early fall, depending on when we get all of that information finished, would be to hold a congregational meeting where we can go through all that, we can work through any of the questions that have come up, and then hold a vote to affirm this phase 2 construction project going forward. Then moving beyond the summer, then what that would look like would be having one service in the fall through next year, having a fundraising capital campaign for whatever is remaining in the budget to accomplish this construction work, working with the construction company to get permits, more finalized architectural drawings, and then beginning the construction process. Our hope is our plan is we would still continue worshiping and using this space while the construction is happening, and then anticipating that by late spring, maybe early summer next year, could have phase 2 completed. And then Beyond that, we're calling that phase 3, which is sort of what Kevin described with continuing to cultivate. I think there is an openness, and I'm grateful for the legacy that we have of church planting within our body. And so kind of making space now, kind of cultivating and tilling the soil that God has put in our community for a potential church plant as we monitor growth in years beyond next spring and listen and pray that God would bring a leader to do such a plant if and when that's the right time.
All right, thanks, Annie. So I recognize that this is just a lot of information coming at you all today. We've been sitting with this for a long time. And so we're going to be sending all this information out via email later today. And we're going to create just an online reflection forum for you just to share, what are you thinking? What do you feel? What questions, wonderings do you have? And just like the feedback form we got, that'll just help us as a lead team track with you. So because this is pretty fresh and new, I don't envision just creating a huge time for debating all the ins and outs of this right now, because you probably just need some time to sit with this. But before we wrap up, I just did want to leave a bit of space if anybody mainly just has some clarifying questions. And so we have a microphone down here. I will say the brisket is warm, so, there's motivation to keep us moving. But anyway, no, I'm just joking. But if there are any questions, just to help you get your head around, we're trying to cover all our bases, but there's so much. So I'll bring a mic out, and we'll try and answer what we can. Okay, I'm just going to come back to Wes, and
Does anyone remember the size of our congregation when we did plant that other church? I knew our old church was, my perception is it wouldn't give me an accurate answer because it was a different, smaller sanctuary, and it was also very crowded.
Yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
no, it was this. Well, we started thinking about it when we were in the other sanctuary, but
Okay, yeah.
because that kind of goes to, how did we succeed?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, that's right. That's a good question. I don't know the exact statistics. I think what was unique about the church planting initiative the last time was that there was a real clear vision and a real clear leader. That kind of just aligned, right? And I guess in our listening, we just haven't seen that in this season, at least yet. And so that's part of it. I will say that there was some, it was challenging after that, especially with the economic downturn that came after. I know staff had to cut salaries back a bit for a couple of years, and there was some challenge to the organization, but it did survive and sustain. That is a beautiful legacy, so thank you. Yeah, a couple questions. Justin.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, as I was listening, I was the one form that talked about church planning, so I'll just disclose that because you're going to hear it just in the language of what I'm sharing. But one of the questions I just, as I was listening, wonder if would be of the Lord is, I really believe that big ideas normally die because we start too big. And so instead of using the question of should we church plant, maybe we back up and say, what does a seed look like? What would a church seed look like? And so that's kind of what is mulling around in my head, and maybe that starts with prayer or something, and then a few gather around that. I don't know, but I think big ideas die because we start too big, and so I just had that to share. So
Yeah,
thank you.
awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'll let Annie.
Mike's got a question here, Phil.
Yeah, Mike. Hi.
Yeah, just a detail question.
Yeah.
I was curious, and maybe you said it and I missed it. We're going to take the tech booth out, right?
Some of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
so my question is, what happens to tech?
Yeah, so the idea is a lot of that space takes up having camera operators. We have our whole video switcher system. So we'll still keep our sound booth and lyric person in a reduced tech booth. And we're able to mount cameras and move the video operator into the back office that they can control it that way. So yeah,
Thank
so it wouldn't be a complete removal. Yeah. Do you want to grab that, Annie, from Mike? Yeah. Yeah, Nick's got a question, and Brian's got a question.
Yes. So could you expand a little bit about, you said the attendance was leveling off, but the numbers you presented, I'm not sure really, like, it was like 80 growth of 80 people over 3.5 years, and then 10 people over what, like 3-4 months? Like, that seems pretty all on the same line.
On
Could
the
you
same
expand?
line. Yeah, no, that's a good question. It's not we're not flatlined. There was 1 year where we went from 190 to 250. And then since then, the last 2 years have been kind of 250 to 265-ish. So that's kind of what we notice. But we're still on an upward trajectory. We're not having like those big 20% leaps like we did. There was one big year anyway. Yeah. Sandy, yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah. Brian, go for it. Brian,
Yeah,
then we'll bring.
just a quick question. There's fire codes. What's the sanctuary capacity right now for people in here? We can allow.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And one of the things you'll notice that we have a fire code capacity and then we have actual capacity. And so fire code is based on 18 inches per person, which is like, just imagine that, right? It's sardines, right? And so there's a difference between fire code capacity and actual capacity. And that's why we've been looking at just the actual psychology of how people sit, and that it's at least, some people say it needs to be 26 inches. Our lived experiences, that 24 number seems to ring true. When we're at 320, there's just like no room. When we're at 260, it's getting full kind of thing, so. Yeah, that's the fire code. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Ready?
Okay,
Ready?
Sandy, yeah.
The visual learner here,
Yeah.
I see that we're adding another section on either side. Does that take that wall back to where the exit sign is?
Correct.
7 rows goes right about here.
Correct.
So I'm kind of okay, I see it. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
there we
done.
are. Yeah, and it would actually go a little bit deeper than that picture. We didn't quite get but it is a deeper angle than that. Yeah. Yeah, Mark.
There's talk about sort of the main paradigm here is sort of space and building and creating capacity from that standpoint. There's another way to think about this, and that is building staff capacity, almost preceding building capacity. And everybody's got their own experiences, but our experience in Colorado was we added staff and attendance jumped with the staff capacity, which then was the impetus for church planting. Now it was sort of anticipated that way, but as you think about this, it's I find myself wondering, staffing needs are different today than they were 25, 30 years ago, more complex, a lot of factors, and so just encourage any thought in that direction. I'm not looking for an answer and all that, but
Yeah, no, that's a great
can I jump-
question. Yeah, go
Can I
ahead.
jump into that one? I think you're reading my mail, Mark, because that's something that we've been having conversations with, and that Kevin and I and the lead team have been encouraging in this process too, of saying, okay, if we're growing in one capacity, we need to be growing in all the ways. So I think that's our hope then, along with this, that we'd be like raising up kind of all sides of whatever that looks like. We're doing some work this summer to say what kinds of staff capacity do we need. So I appreciate you bringing that forward.
And also just name too that there has been over the last 3 years some staffing increase. We moved the associate to a full-time role, worship director, assistant positions for staff for children's, and so we're trying to kind of balance that a little bit. Yeah, Lori. Yeah.
Hi. Well, in the thought of making room, I would hope that this is a really good opportunity to make room for handicapped people, like the seating. And I hope that's part of the process, is thinking, how can we make room for people, especially people who can't navigate the slope?
Okay.
So I would encourage that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we have an accessibility team that's been doing a lot of work on the building in general, but we'll definitely engage with them in this conversation. Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
Really 2 questions. One, the new seats that would be brought in the interim plan,
Yes.
are those going to be as welcoming as the pews are? I mean, have we thought through what that actual seating is? And
Yeah.
then the second question is, have we thought about the acoustics? When we brought in the temporary chairs around like Easter and stuff, I noticed when you're sitting along the wall.
Right,
down here
yeah,
as
so
well.
there's going to be some sound adjustments that would be part of that. Yeah, and one of the questions was just the accessibility or hospitality of those seats. We envision the seating would be similar in terms of style. One of the things we've been learning about just the psychology of seating is people tend to not want to be front and center, especially when they're newer. And so people like the back seats. We actually envision these off to the side seats also having a bit of that level of anonymity that could be a hospitable space for people that don't want to be, sitting right up in the center of things. But we started to talk through some of the dynamics. There are some unknowns until you do it, and tweaking sound. We have been doing some sound tweaks. Hopefully you've noticed some of that. We had someone recently tune the dead spots in our room and figure out how to do that. So there are solutions to that as well. But those are good questions. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious to know if you had also looked into like satellite places to worship where people could watch the sermon online if our capacity is exceeded, yeah.
No, that's a good question. And we do, one of the gifts of our online church is we have a lot of people. I don't know who they all are. One of them is my mom. But anyway, we have a lot of people following us online. One idea that we've had this fall, if we do this phase 1 and we're still running into some issues, is putting up even just like a TV in the library or in other spaces for like overflow space or out in the foyer. So that's on our radar as kind of temporary solutions as well. Yeah. Good. All right, lots of questions. Thank you for your time. And I want to just be mindful of all the awesome food that's out there. So let's go and enjoy a meal. Like I said, I'm going to send out today just a feedback form. We're going to come back to this. We're not finalizing this today. Just want to get this idea out there, and we'll continue to pray and discern together.
Just real quick, thank you guys so much. And one request as you go and enjoy lunch is to go out and enter the line through the gym, through the multipurpose room to enjoy some barbecue together. So thank you all.
All right, bless y'all. Thanks.